then they're going to put a lot of requirements in your permit that says, okay, you said you can meet this control equipment, prove to us that you can.
Thank you.
Oh, I just have one additional from my experiences, not just Colorado, but going to one of our client sites here. That's part of this rule making. For example, when I go and do a site visit on one of the plants, often they will put additional controls on to address what we've been kind of talking about, our cumulative impact. So if there's a concern for, say, visibility or something for particulate matter, they may add additional wetting or additional like control equipment that captures the dust that I find often are above and beyond what is required by the rules. So they may still already be meeting their standard, but it's to address the concerns of the community or what may be, you know, from nuisance or whatever there may be, sound walls, things like that, that are mitigation type things.
Yeah.
So I typically see that.
And just to expand one more, there is an additional rule that's applied to, say, an asphalt plant or a concrete plant, and basically anybody, if they're doing land clearing and things, they have a requirement that limits how much visible emissions can go across the fence line within a particular time period. So that's the easiest way for a regulator to come by and say, wow, you got a lot of dust coming off your facility. It's violating that time, you know, visible emissions going across your property line. So then they can go to the people and say, you know, what are you doing wrong? What aren't you doing that you should be doing? Now, a lot of that is due to you know, wind in the spring times. You know, we get very windy here, and these are open piles. They get blown, the dust gets blown off of them. But the department has addressed that by requiring those kind of facilities to shut down if they have windy periods, or add additional controls on if they wanted to keep working. So I guess to go back to your response, yes, they do have that condition in a permit that says if it's a windy day and we tell you to stop, or we tell you it's going to be windy, you start adding additional controls such as watering to mitigate any visible emissions that are going across your boundary, or shut down altogether if it gets really windy.
I think Mr. Laney wanted to add a comment.
In Paul's response to you, and you could correct me if I'm misinterpreting myself, you asked if the department would ever require controls that an applicant didn't propose. Paul answered that question from his perspective as a professional consultant. And I think you may recall the gentleman's testimony from Trinity. As professionals, we make sure that what we submit to the department qualifies for permit. If someone was less diligent, though, I rest assured the department would go beyond what they apply for and require additional controls.
Thank you. I think this is a good time to take a break. The board's going to continue the questioning of this panel. I just want to let the panel know that we're taking public comment between 5:30 and 6:30. And just for the public's information, we're going to take comment from those online first. We'll go to anybody that's here personally. And if time permitting, we'll go back to those people online. So after that 6:30 ending of public comment, we're going to take about a half-hour dinner break between the board. So if you can return at 7 o'clock, we will continue the questioning from the board. And if someone can remind me, Ms. Semino is online, and I'll allow her to ask questions before Mr. Rose or Mr. Mullenberg. So if someone can remind me of that. So we'll see you back here at 7 o'clock. But Ms. Semino will follow questioning from the board.
Okay.
And we'll pick up the board questions.
Yes, right. All right, if we can get settled, please. We're going to take public comment. We're just going to wait for some board members to arrive. I'm sorry. I still have my, this is my dinner.
I get to do the timer. But people can't see me.
If you
all the
can,
way
if you
over
can
here.
point it this direction. Oh, okay. But you're gonna run the,
No, okay. I'll do it. Can you see it this way?
yes,
I can see it
perfect.
that way too.
Yeah, perfect. I can see that.
I got
Mr.
it.
Hearing Officer, this is Kitty. Can you hear me? Member,
Yes,
can you hear me?
I can hear you. I don't see you.
Okay. There, can you see me now?
Yes.
Okay, just before
Vice
we
Chair
start,
Richards.
yeah, I just wanted to let you know, before we started public comment, is there a way before we leave tonight to just kind of figure out tomorrow? I'm not sure how many more witnesses we have, and I'd like to get that information. So
Well-
maybe we can like discuss that at 7:45 or something.
We'll plan on getting started at 8:30. I think that's the consensus of the board. So we'll get started at 8:30, go as like we have today.
No, what I'm asking specifically is if I can have time to try and find out how many witnesses we have, we can do it first thing in the morning or before we depart today.
I think there was a total, by my count, there were 32 witnesses. I think we've gone through maybe 12.
Oh, well, okay, so we
Maybe.
should probably have a conversation about that tomorrow morning then before we start. I'd like to, okay,
Correct.
terrific. Thank you for your help.
Thank you. Ready for public comment? Let's go online. Ms. S. Dead.
Thomas Dupree.
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes, Mr. Dupree. Do you swear to tell the truth in this proceeding?
Yes, I do.
You've got 3 minutes. Please keep an eye on the clock.
Madam Chair and members of the board, my name is Thomas Dupree. I am a research professor at the University of New Mexico Health Sciences Center. I have a PhD and a Master's of Science from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute and an MA from Columbia University in undergrad from UNM. Please note that I am not formally representing UNM or any of my institutional affiliations. I am exercising my protected free speech as a citizen of Albuquerque and Burleigh County in support of the HEEI regulation. So let me first say that what the board is doing is not radical or extreme. Thank you for protecting the procedural integrity of these hearings in the face of Councillor Lewis's uncivil interruptions. This cumulative impact regulation is, with all of its recent revisions to accede interested parties, is essential to support the modernization and innovation of businesses in the city of Albuquerque and Bernalillo County. It is a necessary first step that is long overdue to support local communities and local businesses in pursuing environmental health equity and economic vitalism. This regulation will simultaneously help us achieve the sustainability goals of our great nation, as articulated in President Biden's Executive Order 14057 on catalyzing American clean energy industries and jobs through the Federal Sustainability Plan. A recent report by the American Lung Association states that Albuquerque ranks 22nd nationwide of the most polluted cities with unhealthy ozone, and our air quality in Albuquerque is getting worse. We are sandwiched between the Permian Basin and the San Juan Basin, which are experiencing levels of oil and gas extraction that we have never seen before. The primitive extractive processes involve venting and flaring, which releases ozone and toxic particulate matter that are putting our communities at risk across New Mexico and beyond. We have a responsibility to innovate and implement technologies that curb the wasting of these precious natural resources. In addition to the carbon problem in the atmosphere associated with climate change, we need to acknowledge the chemical toxicity of fossil fuel emissions. A recent study by the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health calculated that in 2018, 1 in 5 mortalities worldwide were caused by fossil fuel emissions. On Sunday, a group of us from the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences and Environmental Protection Agency took a tour of the South Valley through the communities of San Jose and Mountain View. These are experts who have experience working with EJ communities across the nation and around the world with the highest concentrations of polluting industries at highest mortality rates, lowest socioeconomic statuses. And
You have
what
about 10 seconds to wrap it up, Mr. Dupree.
Okay, I am in full support of HEEI reg, and I hope you all will adopt this precious rule. The future of Albuquerque is in clean energy, not polluting businesses that externalize the costs of production on our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dupree. Next.
Laura Lucero.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, Ms. Lucero, do you swear to tell the truth in this proceeding?
Yes, I do.
You have 3 minutes. Please keep an eye on the clock.
And I apologize. I'm calling in from Washington, D.C. in a noisy location, and I hope that I am not interrupted. I'm Laura Lucero, a longtime resident of Albuquerque. My home is in the Sawmill Historic District. I'm a member of Progressive Democrats of America, Central New Mexico chapter, and I'm speaking both on behalf of PDA and myself. This opportunity to speak in favor of the Cumulative Impacts Ordinance feels like I've come full circle. When I returned to New Mexico in 1991, more than 30 years ago, after finishing law school in California, the very first public meeting I was invited to speak at was a gathering of city planners in Albuquerque. And my presentation was about the importance of reviewing the environmental impacts of development. I suggested that New Mexico might consider a mini NEPA at the state level, but my suggestion went over like a lead balloon. Thanks to the community groups in the South Valley and the staff at the New Mexico Environmental Law Center, who have been pushing for a common sense approach to review the air quality impacts of development, we now have an opportunity to be more thoughtful about our decision-making, and I applaud them. I've heard that Bernalillo County is one of the most polluted airsheds in the country. And certainly there are neighborhoods in our community that bear a disproportionate impact from dirty and polluting industry. This board has the expertise to consider the air quality impacts, but you don't currently have the tools, as I understand it, to deny or condition permits for polluting industry that disproportionately impacts such neighborhoods. I'm scratching my head trying to figure out how you fulfill your mission to protect our air quality without considering the cumulative air quality impacts of polluting industry. Arguments against this type of regulation are probably similar to the arguments I heard 30 years ago. They don't want any changes to the status quo that might require more work.
You have
That
about
might-
30 seconds
that might
remaining. If you-
delay some types of polluting economic development, that might change the decision-making calculus, which currently gives preferential treatment to industry to the detriment of the residents and others who must live with the consequences of your decision-making. So I urge you, and the Progressive Democrats of America urges you, to pass the Health, Environment, and Equity Impacts Regulation. It's long overdue. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lucero. Next.
Travis McKenzie.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. McKenzie, do you swear to tell the truth in this proceeding?
Yes, I do.
Keep an eye on the clock. You've got 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, my name's Travis McKenzie. I'm here in support of HEEI rules and regulations. I'm a teacher at Polk Middle School. I'm also a food justice organizer with the Southwest Organizing Project, and I'm here on my own behalf. I drive past the Mountain View community every day to work. We serve students and families from the Mountain View community at our middle school. And I just feel responsible to come and testify, and just want to thank the board. It's been kind of a roller coaster ride this week. And I want to thank you for your leadership and standing strong and continuing to facilitate this hearing. Cumulative impact is something that has affected our community, both in the Mountain View community, South Valley community, and greater Albuquerque and Bernalillo County community for a long time. And it's been great to hear all the testimonies from all our community members, elders, students, people from all walks of life in support. I've been tuned in to public comment since Monday, trying to speak, and just hearing the overwhelming support is makes my heart feel good. But also, what's been happening with Mr. Dan Lewis and certain members of our city council. So just wanted to appreciate your leadership and continuing to have this hearing. I just wanted to say, please think about the students and the children and our future generations. And I think you guys are doing the right thing. We wanted to support the HEEI regulations and hopefully create the cleanest air we possibly can. I think people are saying it's not good for the economy or slander and like job killing, but people want to come to New Mexico for our beautiful environment, to experience our sacred Mother Earth here. And I think it'll actually help that we do this and try to maintain a clean and healthy air for all. And, just driving by every day, seeing the dense industrial activity, I think this is much needed and long overdue. So again, thank you for your leadership, and just wanted to call in full support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McKenzie. Next.
Elena Gonzalez.
Hello.
Hello, Ms. Gonzalez. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Do you swear to tell the truth in this proceeding?
Yes, sir.
You've got 3 minutes. Keep an eye on the clock.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Elena Gonzalez, and I grew up all around New Mexico, and I'm a member of YUCCA, or Youth United for Climate Crisis Action. I've lived in various cities and towns growing up. Bernalillo County is included in the the list of places I've lived. Currently, I'm a nursing student, and as a nursing student and a person with a future in healthcare, I'm particularly interested in preventative measures that a person can take to better their health on an individual level. When I take care of my patients, I make sure that they know what they can do to improve their health and perhaps prevent disease, as opposed to going through the mental, physical, and financial trauma of having to treat a disease process after physiological harm has already happened. And so with that in mind, I'm going to talk about the epidemiology study called The Burden of Asthma in New Mexico from the New Mexico Department of Health. And as you all know, probably know, the amount of people living with asthma in New Mexico is substantially higher than the national average. And people living in the metro area and Bernalillo County in New Mexico, and also the South Beach region, are the most likely to have asthma. And this study also highlighted race, ethnicity, and income as playing a huge role in who in the state of New Mexico is likely to develop asthma and how good their health outcomes as a whole will look. And so asthma's personal and economic costs are significant and really represent this challenge for healthcare professionals like me who are committed to improving asthma care in New Mexico, but also people who can use their role to provide the citizens and people who need clean air to live without worrying about the pollution altering the cells in our bodies. So polluted air is linked to disease processes as asthma, and it affects a person's well-being to live a quality life, but it also affects their ability to work and ability to contribute to the economy. So I'm in full support of the HEEI regulations to ensure that we have clean air so that when I'm treating patients, regardless of their race or socioeconomic status, that they could perhaps have the same shot of living without disease processes that have been caused by this dirty air. It's frustrating when I have young patients who already have those lung issues, who live in those areas that are substantially affected by environmental racism, because I've personally seen their outcomes be worse than those of the people who can afford to live where the air quality is better. And I'm concerned because I want these steps to be taken to challenge those disparities. I understand that economic concerns have been brought up, but I will close by saying that
Your
the
time is
direct
almost up.
charges.
If you can wrap it
Okay.
up, your time is almost up.
Yeah, apologize. The direct charges of hospitalizations in New Mexico with the primary diagnosis of asthma, which were considered mostly preventable, was about $30 million. So where
Okay.
the air is polluted to help the economy thrive, it actually costs the state more money and the quality of life for our New Mexicans more financially in the long run. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gonzalez. Next.
Raven Alcott.
Hello, good evening, everyone. My name
Ms.
is Raven
Alcott. This is the hearing officer. Do you swear to tell the truth in this proceeding?
Yes.
Ms. Alcott, you've got 3 minutes. If you see me starting to lean forward, that means that your time is almost up.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So my name is Raven Alcott. I'm an alumni at the University of New Mexico and currently a PhD student studying climate mitigation and adaptation. I'm from the Pueblo of San Ildefonso and have called Albuquerque my home for many years, as well as I am a steering committee member of Youth United for Climate Crisis Action, also known as YUCCA. In both of these spaces in Sinai and Albuquerque, it has been evidently clear that environmental burdens like air pollution are borne by our most vulnerable. Time and time again, industries, national laboratories, and capitalists sacrifice low-income communities of color in the name of economic growth. The Health, Environment, Equity Impacts Regulation is a fundamental piece of regulation in centering the voices, needs, and safety of frontline communities. The compounding loss and damages that stem from the unequal distribution of environmental hazards will continue to impact communities, especially in the face of onset anthropogenic climate change. Now more than ever, we need resolutions like HEEI to safeguard communities, ecosystems, and future generations of New Mexico. There's an understandable need for economic growth, however, that should never come at the expense of people and communities. If prioritized, we can foster a sustainable economy that is safe and rooted in environmental and community health. AGI will become foundational in paving mitigative and adaptive economic and environmental solutions because of the cumulative framework incorporated. With that being said, I urge you to adopt and support the HEI regulation. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Alcott. Next.
Farah Nushin.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, Ms. Nushin, this is the hearing officer. Do you swear to tell the truth in this proceeding?
Yes, I do.
You've got 3 minutes. If you can keep an eye on the clock, please.
Okay. My name is Farah Noshin. I've been a resident of Bernalillo County for 13 years. I work in higher education and have advised college students for many years with an emphasis on social justice, ethnic studies, women and gender studies, and sustainability studies. Many of my students come from marginalized groups or are working directly with impacted communities. Aside from my day job I'm also a community organizer. I founded the community called Yoga for People of Color after the 2016 election as a way to provide support. The primary purpose was to cultivate holistic health practices for self-identified people of color for liberation and empowerment. Beyond yoga, we had workshops in nutrition, gardening, and environmental racism. With yoga, we always included breathing exercises. Our community included Black, Pueblo, Diné, Apache, and other indigenous people, Chicanx, Latinx, Asian, API, Desi, South Asian, Arab, international refugees, queer and trans, and all people of color. We continued our services through COVID and just ended our services mid-year to not having any more resources. We served communities of color since 2016 with various classes and workshops, and sometimes our gatherings were several times per week. Because of the population that I served in both the university and outside of it, I've had firsthand contact with impacted communities. I can attest that the pattern and practice of approving air pollution permits in the South Valley and in Mountain View is dangerous for communities of color, and it must end. These communities are already overburdened with industrial facilities that have caused higher rates of asthma and respiratory and cardiovascular disease that we saw all the time, and most alarming lower average life expectancies compared to other parts of the country. We always ask the question, what do people of color need? In addition to spaces for community care like ours, we also need policies that take interest in our health. And thus we need this HEEI regulation. It will mean the city must take into consideration the cumulative impacts from other facilities in the neighborhood when considering air permit applications. It's time to stop harming communities of color and to end racist policies, and for us to collectively protect the air quality and health of families who have borne the brunt of environmental degradation. Passing this regulation is a step in the right direction to address decades of environmental racism. Thank you for considering my perspective, and thanks to all the Indigenous people and people of color organizers and their allies, many whom have come through my doors, who have fought so long and so hard for us to reach this historic moment of justice.
Thank you, Ms. Nushin.
Thank you.
Next.
Sarah.
Hello, my name is Saida Namaste.
You swear to tell the truth in this proceeding?
I do.
Please restate your name and spell your last name. I think we've got it here, but go
Yes,
ahead.
I can do that. My name is Saida Namaste. Last name is spelled Namaste.
Okay, you got 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate these hearings and appreciate the Air Quality Control Board continuing to have them despite intimidation from City Council. I've been coming every evening virtually, and I've just learned so much hearing from other folks. I'm here to support the HEEI regulation. One of the things that caught my eye in learning about it was that if this passes, you could look at the a score I'd never heard of, the air toxics cancer risk score. And I really appreciate that because this year, my daughter has cancer and she's been battling cancer, and it completely upended our lives. We don't know how she got it. I work in the South Valley. I've worked 16 years in the South Valley. I work with folks in Mountain View who have a lot of this industry. And so I'm really concerned about cancer risk from polluters and just what cancer does to us. The same time the girl next door got cancer, and my daughter and their daughter started chemo in January. My daughter lived, but their daughter did not. I don't want anyone to get cancer, and we need the Air Quality Control Board, and we need regulatory bodies and our elected officials to protect us, to protect our health. That is the most important thing. You can't buy that. And I appreciate the previous speaker, Lena Gonzalez, talking about, as a nursing student, seeing people come through with these health problems and economic impact. And these hearings have been so helpful to me to hear the person from Isleta Pueblo Environment Department talk about the impact of air pollution on Isleta Pueblo, and the cancer problems there and the health concerns. And so I just really hope that whatever power you have and that you can just help to protect the people, because seeing my daughter go through this, we need to put community first and our health first. And that should be the role of everyone in these bodies, and not about profit. So thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Sherry Sanders Galloway.
Yes, hello.
Hello, Ms. Galloway. Do you swear to tell the truth in this proceeding?
I do.
You've got 3 minutes. Keep an eye on the clock.
Okay. I'm Sherry Sanders Galloway. I'm a retired RN. My son worked for Greenpeace for many years and was exposed to toxic levels of bad air because he worked in poor and unrepresented communities. He died of prostate cancer at the age of 36, and it was clarified that it was indeed due to pollution that he got cancer at such a young age. As a nurse, and now, I was a primary caregiver for my son, I can attest to what pollution does to all of us. I grew up in Los Angeles, California, where literally every child has some degree of lung disease due to the pollution that was in the air many years ago when I was a child. Now it's happening here. My own husband also developed a rare cancer for anyone to sustain, and he was a teacher for APS. He died of his cancer. My next door neighbor did not die of his cancer that he developed also living here, where the air pollution, the ground pollution, the water pollution can be very severe. So I'm speaking with gratitude that you have this board. I'm speaking positively for HEEI regulation. I believe that if we continue polluting this way, it won't matter whether we have an income or not, because dead people cannot work. That's all I have to say. And thank you so much for letting us all speak.
Thank you very much. Next.
Felicia Guillen.
Hello.
Hello, Ms. Guillen. Do you swear to tell the truth in this proceeding?
Yes, I do.
You've got 3 minutes.
Perfect. Buenos tardes, board members. My name is Felicia Guillen, and I am honored to stand before you today representing UNM Leaders for Environmental Action and Foresight, as well as serving a steering committee member of Youth United for Climate Crisis Action. I am currently studying abroad in Spain, where it is 2 a.m., to urge you to support the health, environment, and equity impact regulation. I consider myself fortunate to have parents who prioritize providing my brother and I with an upbringing and environment that was once characterized by its clean air and clean water. So they chose to raise us in the East Mountains. As a kid, I would spend my afternoons exploring the outdoors, occasionally losing my way through the trees, but always finding my bearings when I stumbled upon a small yet charming creek behind our house. Regrettably, this creek is now a distant memory, a casualty of environmental degradation. Now, air pollution has become a pressing concern, affecting the well-being of our community. I share this personal journey not only as a testament to the profound impact of our surroundings on our lives, but also to underscore the critical need for the proposed health, environment, and equity impacts regulation. Our communities deserve protection from the adverse effects of air pollution. The HEEI regulation presents a historic opportunity for positive change, and so I am urging you not only to implement this regulation in the affected areas of Mountain View and the South Valley, but also to extend this to other parts of the state, because it should be a fundamental right for all residents of New Mexico to breathe clean air. Contrary to the misconception that strict environmental regulations hamper economic growth, I believe that a thriving economy is achievable when everyone can breathe clean air. By prioritizing the health of our communities and implementing sustainable practices, we can create a more resilient and prosperous future for New Mexico. I'm also a student who's studying sustainability studies at UNM, and I deeply understand the significance of environmental justice. And so it's paramount that we embed these practices in our policies to ensure that we have a healthier and more equitable future for every New Mexican. The HEI regulation aligns seamlessly with the principles of environmental justice, and it contributes to the development of a more sustainable and resilient Albuquerque. So please, I urge you to listen to the voices of residents from overburdened communities and advocate for the implementation of the HEI regulation. I believe that we can really achieve a New Mexico where every citizen can breathe clean air, lead a healthy life, and contribute to a thriving and sustainable economy. Thank you for recognizing the importance of this regulation and its potential to safeguard the essence of our communities for generations to come.
Thank you, Ms. Guillen. We have time for 2 more online. Then we'll take public comment from those present. If there's time remaining, we'll circle back to those online. So we got time for 2 more online. Next.
Seneca Johnson.
Hello.
Hello, Ms. Johnson. Do you swear to tell the truth in this proceeding?
Yes, I do.
You've got 3 minutes. Keep an eye on the clock.
Great, thank you. Good evening. My name is Seneca Johnson, and I'm a member of Yucca Youth United for Climate Crisis Action. I grew up here in New Mexico, and I'm currently a student at Yale University, majoring in environmental studies with a concentration in policy. So I'm here today, like many others, to ask for your support of the health, environment, and equity impact regulations. I'm here today, like many others, because I care deeply about the health and safety of our communities, present and future. Generations in Albuquerque have lived with poor air quality because there was little to no consideration taken to their health or the cumulative impacts of building so many industrial facilities near residential areas, with these neighborhoods largely defined by race and economic status. And I have seen this conversation framed as economic growth versus environment, and I ask that you please don't fall for that false dichotomy or the thought that this must be an either-or conversation. The future of New Mexico's job market does not have to be inherently harmful to the people living and working here. And in fact, I really think it shouldn't be. We're asking for informed decision-making in the implementation of new industrial facilities. And part of what must inform those decisions is the health and safety of nearby residents. Even, from a purely economic perspective, it's still prudent to protect our air quality and prioritize the health of residents. As others have spoken to, chronic poor air quality, which again, low-income and POC neighborhoods have been subject to for decades, comes with many negative health impacts, from asthma and other respiratory diseases to harming mental and cognitive health. And, these are things that affects people's day-to-day lives for their entire lives. And the potential for new jobs at the cost of healthy employees will mean further strain on our healthcare system, more sick days taken, more people unable to work at all, and less capacity for these future business ventures. But beyond that, people are more than employees and employers. They're people who deserve to live without this fear and dread of health complications or developing morbidities, who deserve to breathe clean air and deserve to live full lives. So, we're not asking for these HEI regulations because we're not concerned with the job market or the economy. We're asking for these regulations because we don't want already overburdened communities to be hurt any further. And yet we've seen what happens when community isn't listened to or taken into account, and it hurts everyone generations down the line. So these regulations are an important step in building a better, safer, and healthier and more equitable future, and supporting the lives of our community members. So thank you for your time and your consideration. I urge you to please support this step in building a healthier community and pass the HEI regulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. One more online.
Sally Davis.
Hello, and I swear to tell the truth.
Thank you.
Okay. My name is Sally Davis. I'm a former teacher, a former member of the city's ethics board, a former director of Common Cause New Mexico, and been a citizen in Bernalillo County for over 40 years. I'm now retired and a grandmother of 6 grandchildren who live in Albuquerque. Good jobs and a clean environment go together. Citizens in Albuquerque don't have to choose between creating good jobs and protecting the environment. We can and must do both. My son, daughter-in-law, and 2 granddaughters live in Mountain View. I drive from my home near UNM to the Mountain View neighborhood several times a week, and I'm always appalled and depressed at the sights I see along the way. It's not a neighborhood, it's an industrial zone. Every dirty industry in the city seems to be piled in this one area, asking the people who live there to make sacrifices for the rest of the city. In an editorial, the Albuquerque Journal asked of the Air Quality Board, who do these people think they are? I ask of Dan Lewis, Albuquerque City Councilors, the Journal editorial board, and the citizens of Albuquerque who live in tree-lined, parks-filled, beautifully planned neighborhoods free of industrial pollution. Who do you think you are, pushing pollution into one neighborhood so your exposure to pollutants that can cause asthma, cancer, cardiovascular problems, low birth weight, even suicide is kept as far away from you as possible? Who do you think you are that you feel entitled to breathe clean air when others don't? We're in this together, Albuquerque, and we can have a thriving business community and clean air. We can choose to do both. I strongly support the regulation.
Thank you. We'll take up those present and call you first one.
Beth Morlove.
Yes, to the podium. If you can raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the truth in this proceeding?
I swear to tell the truth in this proceeding.
Yes. Okay. You've got 3 minutes.
Okay, my name is Beth Morlove. I'm a resident of the South Valley now and of New Mexico since 1969. My father was a gunnery sergeant in Vietnam who died from multiple complications from Agent Orange. My family, and I was in utero, we lived in Camp Lejeune. So when I hear Dan Lewis make quotations around the word overburdened communities, it makes me real mad because my father was definitely overburdened by his service for this country. And I have to wonder about so-called leaders who label those who fight for a clean environment as extremists. It makes me wonder what exactly it is our so-called Defense Department is really defending. We need big changes in order to turn this Titanic around before it crashes into the iceberg. If that sounds extremist, then we must have Captain Ahab at the helm right now. We need stronger regulations against pollution, not less. We need to prioritize life and health over property and profits. We do not prioritize saving property when the house is on fire instead of saving our kids and our pets. We need a values change in leadership. We now have so-called leaders selected from chambers of commerce who have all the wrong priorities. This board, this air quality board that I support represents exactly the kind of leadership we need now, which prioritizes life and health and the generations coming up and the good of the community and the environment. Dan Lewis, on the other hand, represents the kind of so-called leadership which prioritizes profits, property, and the same old business as usual nonsense, heading us all straight for that iceberg, or like lemmings driving us all straight off a cliff. I do not want my friends in the South Valley, my loved ones who I know have cancer now from what they dealt with in their overburdened communities. I don't want any of us to be Dan Lewis's lemmings or his guinea pigs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next.
Xavier Barraza.
Do you swear to tell the truth in this proceeding?
Yes, sir. I swear to tell the truth.
3 minutes. I'll signal when you have 1 minute left.
You got it. My name is Xavier Barraza, and thanks to my ancestors and the community I belong to and Los Sardinas Institute, I've been afforded the opportunity to be present for 90% of this proceeding, including all the technical testimony and research. I've been doing community-based organizing and research for over 15 years. That's over half my life. First, member Emberline quoted Einstein, and I want to quote Einstein as well. We cannot solve the problems with the same thinking that created them. When Dr. Calloway testified earlier on EJ Screen and the complications of using EJ Screen or a screening tool to make major regulatory decisions, I'd like to remind this board that the federal government is using a screening tool known as the Climate and Economic Justice Screening Tool to distribute $60 billion of federal funding. So I think if we can distribute $60 billion using a screening tool, we can decide whether a $350,000 permit can be applied. Also, when Mr. Salente testified about the notes of NMED being more stringent than the NACs, I want to remind this board that that is not completely true. The NMED requirements are stringent for 3 of the 6 NACs, not all of the NACs, and many of those are not more stringent. Furthermore, I'd like to point out that when his testimony stated that Santa Barbara County and Ventura County had a greater budget per staff capita, I want to remind this board that if you look at those counties, the fees to pollute are 20 to 200+ % more in Ventura and Santa Barbara County than here, which may be why we're not getting our fair share of our air, because we're not charging for it. Furthermore, I want to build upon the comments that we've been making. Los Sardinas Institute has been part of the environmental justice movement since its conception. In September of 2013, and if you would please document this, volume 88, number 176, the EPA filed a new rule proposal for the HAPs. So the HAPs are currently under review because they do not protect public health. You've heard countless arguments about the economic impacts. I would like you also furthermore to look up the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD. It is the premier economic development corporation for the world. And I would like to remind this board that if you look at the statistical data of how much it costs for someone to get asthma, it's $280,000 per statistical case. If you multiply that by the 180,000 cases that are located in New Mexico, you have a $38 billion tab. Furthermore, I'd like to talk to the testimony about the 70-year rule, which has been belittled. In July of this year, you can look this up also on the EPA, we filed EPA complaint number 01R-22R6, 02R-22R6, which outlined that there are incredible concerns for not properly accounting for the 70-year rule, and that the 70 years at which point of your life is important. If that 70 years start at birth, meaning in the womb, like many of the testimony has said, the impact is actually 100 times greater than if it happens later in your life. I have further testimony. If the board would oblige with questions, I can continue, or I can submit these with written.
Submitted by written form. Unless the board has any questions, but next.
Sally McCarthy.
Good evening. If you can raise your right hand,
Good
please.
evening.
Do you swear to tell the truth in this proceeding?
I do.
You've got 3 minutes. I'll signal you when you got a minute left.
So I just want to compliment you all on sitting up there this whole time. I used to be on this Albuquerque Air Quality Board back in the 70s. And after that, I was on the Environmental Planning Commission. So I've had some experience with sitting through long hearings, and we appreciate your being able to do that. I agree with all the testimony that I've heard here about the HEE impact regulation. And I think that I don't need to give any more technical information, but what do we need more of? We have beautiful days in Albuquerque. What do we need more of? We need water and we need air. And this is a time when you all can help us toward that decision. So I am grateful for a mayor who tries to balance between economics and environment and to bring together the difficulties that we all have in trying to get what we need and what we want. So I am just glad to be here, and I want to hand out to you a
Thank you very much. Next.
Kathy Potts.
I swear to tell the truth.
Thank you. You've got 3 minutes. I'll signal you when you have 1 minute left.
All right. My name is Kathy Potts. Having lived in the Mountain View neighborhood for 19 years, I can see many changes that have happened. In addition to the 7 petroleum bulk terminals, 3 Superfund sites, many auto salvage yards and manufacturing shops, a hazardous waste disposal company, to name a few, I have seen the additions of Albuquerque Asphalt and the allowance of CNC demolition services to run its business and store its waste materials along the clear ditch running through the neighborhoods. If it's ugly and somewhat controversial, send it to the South Valley. Air has no boundaries. These asphalt and congregate material companies have no containment of their materials when the wind blows, or doesn't blow for that matter. I understand these items are a necessity for growth. However, America is a land of ingenuity. With demand, new solutions will come for keeping our environment clean and people healthy. The argument the business will suffer has not come to be proven. Is the health of the individual over the bottom line of the company not to be considered in this discussion? I have in the past year wandered out of my house several times to perform chores and been met by an odor I could only describe as chemical smelling. Is this from the base, maybe a local business? I am stymied, but know this odor to be real and repeated. What am I and my animals breathing? Why should business not have to be considered more stringently for air quality and other environmental issues to an area before opening shop? It is good for the consumer and benefits the people. Perhaps more green businesses will spring forward. I believe my neighborhood is the exact reason more thought needs to go into these decisions. Please support the HEI regulation.
Thank you. Next.
Jessica Swan.
Do you swear to tell the truth in this proceeding?
I do.
You got 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to the entire board. My name is Jessica Swan. I'm a daughter, sister, wife, friend, mother, farmer, food justice advocate, and UNM alumni. I work in the unincorporated South Valley. My family, we are from a land grant acequia community in southern New Mexico. And we are Hinosadio people from so-called New Mexico. Our people have been here for thousands of years, living in right relationship to the land, air, and water our ancestors needed to survive. We are farmers, and we are also victims of the first atomic bomb outside of Querizoso, New Mexico on July 16th, 1945. Cancer and other environmental related illnesses devastate our families here in the South Valley and around New Mexico. Our stories of cancer are too common. Our life's work has been to improve the generational wealth and health of our New Mexico people. We are in support of a cumulative impact ordinance. I work for a farmer-led cooperative in the unincorporated South Valley who is building New Mexico economy through sustainable and regenerative food justice. We have aggregated over $400,000 in local food sales for farmers this year. We are not here for false solutions. We are not a wasteland for industry and the rest of the country. We face real life health impacts from industrial pollution. I'm the daughter of a bioorganic chemist who was the lead chemist for New Mexico Water Authority before his retirement. And my mother was a doctor of nursing practice who led UNM hospitals for over 10 years before she passed from pancreatic cancer and served in every healthcare institute in our redline communities. We understand the true risks associated with continued redlining in our communities. Our communities have invested and believe in a just transition to a sustainable economy with healthy families. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Mila King Flaherty? I apologize if I got that wrong.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the truth in this proceeding?
I do.
Can you spell your last name?
Yeah, it's King-Flaherty.
Thank you. You got 3 minutes.
So my name is Maya King Flaherty. I'm an organizer with the Sierra Club Rio Grande chapter, and we represent over 35,000 members and supporters throughout the state, with the majority of whom live in Albuquerque or in Bernalillo County. And I'd like to thank you all for your time and your expertise and service you all provide to us, and to the groups in the Mountain View Coalition who brought this petition to the board in response to years of inequity and environmental racism in their communities. And our chapter is in strong support of the HEEI regulation. We like to make it abundantly clear that the county is within 95% of exceeding federal smog limits, and that requires urgent and intensive action on the part of this board, our community, businesses, industry, and our elected leaders. The American Lung Association assigned Bernalillo County with an F grade for ozone pollution. And as a resident, I'm stunned by the lack of engagement by the city's environmental health department. We need to remember that industrial development is not economic development if it hurts our kids, our families, and our communities. If industry pollution leads to more asthma attacks, increased rates of cancer, upper respiratory illnesses, and many other health issues experienced by our loved ones, we should not be considering this as economic development, especially if the cost of doing business serves to perpetuate environmental racism. And the health costs of industrial pollution far exceed any monetary value gained from supposed economic development. So we are sure that this board can finalize a rule that protects our people first and encourages economic development that leads to healthy and thriving communities. And we hope you move swiftly to implement these rules. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Mark Leclerc.
Good evening again, Mr. Leclerc. Do you swear to tell the truth in this proceeding?
I do.
State your name again.
My name is Mark Leclerc. Thank you for hearing my comments. I just wanted to say I read the draft that was available, and I have a few concerns. One, I can understand some of the blowback from business. As I understand the proposed legislation, it could trigger a situation where a business might have to provide a lot of data that I can understand some of the responses. I'm also very concerned that the proposal doesn't go far enough. We've already identified very clearly that Mountain View is an overburdened community. My understanding of this proposal is that it applies only to new permits, and I don't see how that's going to change their situation. I don't want any neighborhood in my city to be an overburdened community or a sacrifice zone. And I think that we can actually do something to unburden them. Thank you for hearing my comment.
Thank you very much. Next.
Christina Suozi.
Okay. Thank you. You've got 3 minutes.
Okay, my name is Dr. Christine Sposi. I'm a former director of public health
Can
for
you
the state of New Mexico.
Spell your last name, please.
Oh, I should, shouldn't I? And we should all chip in and get her a massage. Don't you think so? Okay, S is in Sam, U-O, Z is in zebra, Z is in zebra, I. And I'm retired now. I have 3 grandchildren. I'm really happy about that. I'm also the founder and the PI of the South Valley Partners for Environmental Justice, the New Mexico Health Equity Working Group, and the Deconstructing Racism Working Group. I want to first thank all of you. You've done tremendously well for the city, for the state, for the region. Thank you. And you've done it with much antagonistic and egregious behavior. So I really apologize to you for that. We've all heard from experts and they were wonderful on air quality and, I'm sorry, not air quality, air modeling, air dispersion, et cetera. And some have said, what's this got to do with health? Well, public health has deemed air quality, air pollution, to be the #1 threat to the public's health. That's pretty darn important. There's a latest publication of Scientific American that names that, and also lists all of the cancers that are associated with air pollution: pancreatic, liver, ovarian, lung, of course, et cetera, breast cancer, lots of them. So we need to be aware of that. So of course, I urge you to pass this really much needed, and also it's going to come. This reminds me of when we worked on in public health, we worked on the indoor smoking ordinance. You all know that, right? People said that'll never pass. You know, we'll lose business. And people called my office. What? Somebody's smoking down the hall. What can I do about it? I said, tell them to stop. It's the law. This is like that. It's going to happen. It's inevitable, and this is really important. I want to give you one little kind of test, if you will, and please don't shout out the answers, but because then it'll ruin it for everyone else. But what are the 2 most important factors that influence a population or a person's health? Of course, I'm going to give you the answer, but think about it. I want you all to think what you would say. And I'll tell you, most people would say it's healthcare and genetics. Totally wrong. What it is the color of your skin and your zip code. And this, yeah, thank you. That was really nice. This regulation that's being advanced is wonderful in addressing the social determinants of health. So thank you, and thank you for your support, and I urge you to continue to support it and to promote it. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got time for 2 more public comments. Next.
I have one more signed up. Alejandria Lyons.
Do you swear to tell the truth in this proceeding?
I do.
Your name, spell your last name.
My name is Alejandria Lyons, Lyons.
Okay, you got 3 minutes.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank the board for getting us here today. My name is Alejandria Lyons. I'm the coalition coordinator for New Mexico No False Solutions. We are a coalition of groups that are fighting false solutions and trying to evade the climate chaos that we see coming towards us. I'm here today to speak, not only in favor for our coalition, but also some of the groups that I worked with previously, and many of those folks are in this room today. And some of the folks are not here today. I really commend this board for starting to make right the legacy of environmental racism that has taken place here in Albuquerque. Previously, before this coalition, I worked with the Southwest Organizing Project, and we were trying to do the same work with members of the San Jose community. And they are one of the communities who would benefit greatly from this cumulative impacts ordinance. They worked very tirelessly, Steve and Esther Abeda, to look at some of the error permits that were happening. I think that Councilor Dan Lewis is wrong because a lot of our agencies have let us down. And in the work that we do through environmental justice, we see that all the time. And so the work of this board is really important. Some of the things that I wanted to know of how we got here today is some of the work that groups such as the Mountain View Coalition, other residents, Southwest Organizing Project, the Environmental Law Center, New Mexico Environmental Law Center have done. So, you know, in 2014, there was a complaint that was filed, right, for Hanstein Oil. They waited 3 years for that hearing, and then later filed a Title VI complaint. EPA picked up that complaint, and the Environmental Health Department was forced to be in negotiations with the community. And at that time, the community had gathered information from the Bucket Brigade to talk about cumulative impacts. This is 10 years that the community has been documented, among other years of just the community fighting for clean air. Nothing came out of the alternative dispute resolution. And so I hope that this hearing proceeds. I hope that, you know, we can get something on the books, because as many people have mentioned, cumulative impacts are coming to us. It's happening at the federal government. And I really commend you all for standing strong against, you know, some of the things that the counselors have said and the business community, because we need this, and we need to start making Albuquerque a place for people of color and those who have been impacted. And so that's it. That's all I wanted to share. Thank you.
I think there's a question. There's a question for you.
You mentioned the Bucket Brigade and data that was collected by the community. I have only been on the board since 2020, so I don't know all the details of some of that. Can you tell me just a little bit more about the Bucket Brigade and what you measured, and what you think about the data quality?
Yeah. So I was actually just a volunteer with the Southwest Organizing Project at that time. They may be able to provide further information, but essentially they worked with community members to collect different buckets with evidence of what was near where there needed fence line monitoring. I think that also community members, Esther and Siva Beta, could speak to this. I think that, you know, this is data that is community data that was collected with measuring tools that I think would be helpful for some of the evidence of this hearing. I can email that and provide that, but also noting that folks from Southwest Organizing Project might be able to speak more on that. So hopefully they can comment.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We will go ahead and take a break.
Mr. Hearing Officer, I actually have one more sign up online.
Okay, we'll take that one last one online then.
Katie Dix.
Ms. Dix, can you hear me okay?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes. Do you swear to tell the truth in this proceeding?
I do.
You've got 3 minutes. Keep an eye on the clock.
Thank you. Again, my name is Katie Dix. I am a South Valley resident, and I am a mother of a 6-month-old who is homesick with me, so I regretfully am here and not in person, but I'm speaking today as the executive director of the Friends of Valle de Oro, expressing strong support for the HEEI regulation. The Friends of Valle de Oro is dedicated to environmental justice and health, not just for our human neighbors, but also for our wildlife kin, our greater ecosystem that supports all life. Environmental justice and equity practices are ingrained in the daily activities, programs, and operations of our work here at Valle de Oro National Wildlife Refuge, but also in the greater metro area. This regulation is critical to the health and well-being of everyone in Albuquerque, but especially those overburdened by a disproportionate concentration of toxic air emissions. The Mountain View Action Coalition is made up of longtime champions, and it is because of the grassroots efforts of these residents that the refuge exists in the first place. It was established as an act of environmental justice to protect green space and to combat proposals for additional toxic industry in a community already overburdened with waste and pollution. The Friends are part of the coalition because of this history and because we believe this work is directly tied to our mission. We know this regulation could have tremendous impact on environmental and human health. We believe this air quality board knows it too. Over the last 4 days, we have heard testimony from environmental and community experts, and we have heard public comment and overwhelming support for the HEEI regulation. We are asking you to prioritize people, to prioritize health. Please listen to our cries to do the right thing, to put citizens and the place we inhabit first. Thank you to this board for not letting this process get derailed by Dan Lewis and the Albuquerque City Council. Do not let this act of justice be derailed by fear and threats from industry leaders that are unwilling to make positive changes for the greater good. Like the refuge, this regulation was drafted as an act of environmental justice. We have an opportunity for reclamation to assert the right for clean air and health for everyone in Albuquerque and Bernalillo County. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dixon, to all public speakers. We'll go ahead and take a break, a dinner break until 7 o'clock, then we'll reconvene with our panel.
questions.
Second night. Is it first?
First night. First night.
First night, okay, yeah.
Resume with panel with board. We can get settled, please. Get the panel members back up here.
I don't love that idea. I know, me neither, but talk to her about it because she cares about it. And I said I would.
Yeah, questions, right? Yeah. Yeah, that's fine. Take your time.
Yeah. We can try to wrap up 7. Oh, yeah.
7:45 is she. We'll see where we got, how far we get. All right, we'll continue with board questions. I think we left off with board member Coleman.
I was done.
You're done. Okay. Mr. Galuski?
Yes, hi. I trust you guys had a chance to get some dinner, if you wanted dinner. So I believe that each of you expressed some surprise and dismay that the EHD wasn't involved apparently in the creation of the rule that's before us. And I think it's fair to say we are all sort of dismayed by that. And as I mentioned earlier in the afternoon, the Mountain View community has been trying to get, my understanding, I've only been on the board since April, is that the Mountain View community was trying to get this in front of EHD for many years, maybe even a couple of decades. And for whatever reason that I don't understand, that did not happen. And you'll note they're not here either. So I'm not sure what's going on with that. But as I mentioned earlier, the only way that the petitioners could get all of us in a room was by filing a rule that the board would evaluate. That's just the structure of the system we have. And I've thought of this, that the rule they developed is maybe a little bit like at the ending of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, where they were cornered by the Bolivian army and they had to come out with their guns blazing. Hopefully this will not end in the same way. But to continue the Robert Redford, Paul Newman analogy, I wonder if a better approach might be more like the Sting, where rather than doing the big thing right at the end, they built up to it. So that's my clever way of
I like that.
getting into this, of taking this iteratively, starting with some small steps that are transparent, easily understood, well-founded. Let that run for a while and build from there. And one of the earlier, I think it was Mr. Cohen, indicated that that's a common approach. And I just wanted to ask each of you if you could comment on that idea of starting small. And I don't even know what's possible. I'm speaking as a physical scientist, not as an attorney or a regulator. But can you, working within the existing framework of permitting, what are some ways that we could start to incorporate some aspect of environmental justice criteria, community data collection, things that are doable kind of, on a nowish timescale that don't require a lot of involvement from the EHD, or some, but to get kind of everybody on the same page as we move forward. I just wonder if you have some thoughts about that.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, I'll speak to, I think, something that we all collectively think. So first, let me say, I think taking your time and starting small, but doing something is in getting moving forward makes progress. It's similar to what we've just really recently done in Colorado, where we knew that it wasn't probably going to be the most, perfect, because nobody's defined perfect. And we're talking about human beings and people and engagement. And so, but it started something that was small and that could be implemented effectively and quickly. And that we'll see how that goes as a success. We're just getting going on that. So I think taking that approach is not unusual. It's consistent. And then it also has off ramps, and it also has a review period, say 3 years or something like that, to come back and assess how the regulations are going, are they effective, et cetera. So giving yourself the flexibility within a rule. With that said, I would consider something like kind of like what I shared a little bit earlier, but that felt like a long time ago now. I think, first of all, like I said, I see this as two concepts, but they are very interrelated. So the environmental justice piece, that sounds to me like a big priority here. And that if you say there's been, concerns for a long time, and then there's kind of an air toxics rule, right? About what do you do about air quality and air toxics? With respect to the environmental justice piece, like I stated earlier, and like I believe Ms. Coleman had asked me some questions, is I see the use of an EJ screening tool integrated within probably Reg 41, if that's the predominant air permitting regulation. And not, it not being something that's just a check the box and we ran the tool, but in a manner that could be determined consistently with what EPA's criteria are on an overburdened community. But then using that to inform what the next steps would be. I don't know exactly how that would be written into the current regulation, but I could see that it allows you to determine and identify potential areas of concern. And to me, I see that as the starting point, whether it then goes and feeds into the city's environmental justice strategic plan that's been offered. I saw a lot of really comprehensive things that also integrate important concepts, which is especially about meaningful engagement to the community, and which is what it seems like is just as much needed. What I also noticed in that plan was offering EPA to have accountability on it. You know, there's transparency and EJ liaison that may help with some of the things one of the other board members mentioned about doing that, you know, having more engagement and figuring out how to resolve. By no means do I come in and say that I've got an answer since I don't live in this community. I just want to say that I understand when you get to doing community work, it really is, you know, grassroots. So I see that as not just, so that is effective. It seems to be that would be something that could be very implementable. It's vetted, you're right, we talked about that. So I think that fits a lot of the boxes you're talking about. And then lastly, I would say from the air toxic side, is there something to consider with adopting the state plan? If there's a state plan that addresses some of the air toxics, it may not be perfect with the full scope, but it's something to start with. And it gives measurable metrics, right? I guess to say that you could evaluate it. It's been vetted already now in the state. So that sounds like something that's reasonable at a local level to be able to adopt.
Yeah, and I agree. That is something that could be done fairly easily, is just adopt that portion of their Part 72 regulation that discusses toxics. I mean, even I've heard concerns about concrete plants and asphalt plants. Some of the main toxics from those facilities are addressed in that regulation, that the toxics regulation that's part NMED's Part 72. And I also agree. I know the city had, or the environment department had come up with a plan that's kind of addressed public engagement. And I think that can be moved forward and in making it a meaningful way to get the community involved or get the parties together in a hopefully productive way.
Thanks.
May I say one more thing about the air toxics plan? When you think about air toxics, and you've heard a lot about that today, what makes sense about that is typically states or districts will develop an air toxics plan that's for all communities within your county, right? So that would be a plan that's going to be implemented not just in an overburdened community, because air toxics is often a regional issue. Like you've heard, air doesn't just stay right there. So it's protective. It's then looking at your air quality as a whole as a county and addressing what priorities may be driving risk.
It's hard for me to add to that, but I know that there was some discussion about, you know, the conversation and the interaction. I think as I see what's happening from my observation, the conversation has to be about the community. It has to be about the relationships. Don't wait until it's a permitting action. So I think that's one key. And I think the other thing that I've seen from a distance in California, because my involvement is not as direct, but in some communities, that communication is facilitated through a mediator. And when I hear the stories about the relationship and the level of trust right now, I think the liaison makes sense. There's a reason to have the liaison, but if you are going to start this level of community engagement, it might make sense to have that neutral party facilitating that communication.
That's great. Thanks. Those are all specific actionable ideas. That's really helpful. Thanks. A couple of technical things. So I'm an atmospheric modeler. So whenever people talk about that, I zoom in on that. I think that it sounds like EHD maintains a data set that's 5 years of past National Weather Service data. Is that correct, Mr. Wade?
That's correct. And
And-
they update it every once in a while. It's not updated every year. It's updated every once in a while.
Yeah.
But the idea is, 5 years, you're going to get most of the conditions, meteorological conditions within that 5 years that you normally see.
Yeah, I just wanted to state, I think that's fine. Because the way this exercise is the modeling is kind of a climatological analysis. You're not trying to predict, my understanding is you're not trying to predict where a plume is going to be at 3:30 p.m. on March 24th.
No.
You're trying to see kind of statistics of where it's going to go. And 5 years of data from the National Weather Service or from Bernalillo seems completely reasonable to me. That said, so you also mentioned that like a full EPA weather station would be on the order of like $100,000. If we as a community wanted to get a better sense of the variability in wind directions relative to the sunport, we could do, I could imagine some community engaged science to set up a less expensive weather station like in the Mountain View neighborhood to really just get like wind direction and wind speed and temperature, which can be done for much cheaper. And that would give us some baseline data for comparison with the sunport to see like, well, how representative is the sunport for different areas around the city? And I just wanted to ask if you thought that might be a reasonable approach.
Yeah, I mean, and like anything else, initial cost of any of those things is you have to buy the equipment.
Yeah.
You have to buy the sensors. If it's only run for a year, well, then the expenses within that 1 year. I mean, if you're spreading it out, if you put up some sort of system and you spread it all out over a number of years, well, then, amortize it's not as expensive looking. But if you're doing it just for 1 year worth of data, it's expensive.
Yeah. I would just say there are university partners who have that instrumentation.
Yes.
Just saying.
And there are cheap systems out there that, I mean, just the pole systems that you can just push up. It just how fancy you want to get.
Yeah.
You want to be able to communicate with it all the time. That it can be fairly cheap.
Yeah, my intuition is that the sunport data is probably fine for the vast majority of the region, but there is some question, and it seems like it would be straightforward to just distinguish, like, well, is the sunport really representative?
Yeah, and the other piece that goes into air mod is the upper air.
Yeah.
We have that in Albuquerque. That's not going to significantly change throughout the city, and realistically in New Mexico, there's only 2 upper air datas. And that's what's used for, putting together an AirMet data set.
Yeah.
Is one of those 2, or if it's near Texas, you might bring in Odessa, so that's, we have that available, and it's going to be about as predictive as anything out there.
I agree. Yeah. All right, thanks. That's actually all I have for you.
Member Armijo, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I just have a couple of questions. This goes to you, Dr. McMillan. I heard you say simple and clear, and I'm kind of confused because there has to be some sort of threshold, permit granted, permit denied. And you indicated that the petitioner's use of the what did they call it? The EJ screening data and the way they manipulated it did not meet your criteria. Is that pretty much correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
The screening, in the rule, they're using the screening data for 2 things. The first is to just identify an overburdened community, to my understanding, reading the rule and what I've read. So that's like, we're identifying the overburdened community with these screening criteria. And then that triggers everything else that goes forward. The other place that they've embedded the screening level data is in the permit denial. And it's just for primarily the two factors. And that's where you have to run that model, the facility model, and then if it exceeds those criteria, it's that county average of the risk, then that's what they're using for a permit denial. So I'd like to separate out what I'm saying is there's one piece is defining an overburdened community using the screening tools, which I think is reasonable. And like I've said, with respect to the EJ screen, like EPA's EJ screen, its intention. It's another thing to now take some of that data and apply it to something I believe is a misuse of that to trigger. There are other alternatives to use, which are generally accepted risk-based. So like there are other criteria that are in there.
And that's
Does
for
that
the,
help?
is that for the permitting?
That's that
process?
permitting
Okay,
piece.
and I'll ask this to someone else before. If you were the emissions god, what would you use for that criteria for the permit portion?
Yes. So if you were to adopt that permit portion, I would use the cancer risk thresholds and/or they have the hazard index equal to 1. I would use a cancer risk threshold that would be generally higher than their justification or the basis for the 5 in a million. But I would use something like a 10 in a million or something else that would be more consistent. It just depends on the action taken from that. Does that make sense?
Yes, so you're just saying it's just a matter of
It's like-
choosing a
It
data
is.
point.
It is a point, but those are at least more standard than using a county average risk number. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I think
And
you
so,
cleared it up for me. Thank
okay.
you.
And then that threshold, what's concerning to me is it's the action taken from that threshold. Those cancer risk like 5 in a million, or if you use 10 in a million, or EPA's upper limit is 100 in a million generally, before they say we should really look at this and decide if there's some management of risk we need to do in an industry. So typically though, it is not used to just flat out deny a permit. It's used to inform if there needs to be additional controls like we've talked about or other actions.
Correct.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
And so tying that in with these overburdened communities, those thresholds could be lessened. Is that correct?
I think that's what the petitioners are proposing in that it has been done in some regs, and I think in California or others, that is one option. At 10 in a million to me is still 1/10 below EPA's upper acceptable threshold. So
So it's just a matter of choosing a number.
it's a little bit more of a policy decision. That's right. But I would always argue as a scientist that you have to have a good, clear objective of why you're choosing a number and what action you take.
Okay. And you indicated that you worked on a similar provision like ours, I guess, in Colorado. And I'm just wondering, what agency did you work with for that? Is it a board like ours, or is it a statewide thing, or what was it?
Yeah. So in Colorado, we only have a state air quality board, but it would be similar to yours. Typically, what I think we're all familiar with, and so what happened is we passed a law called it was pretty much called an EJ Act that mandated the state environmental department to have to promulgate rules to address environmental justice concerns. So then the department drafted a set of rules, and all parties were able to provide input into those drafts multiple times. And then we did have a hearing just like this, but it was on the department's rules that were drafted. And then we were all parties to those department rules. So, and then those were voted on by a board like yourself.
Okay, so it was sort of similar
It's
to
a
what
little,
we're doing here.
a little bit, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Except they were the regulators drafting them, so they knew they would have to implement them.
I don't believe I have any more questions. I think
Chair Paul.
everybody else has already
Chair
answered
Paul.
them. Thank you.
Last but not least.
Thanks. Dr. McMullen,
Yes.
thank you so much. Thank you all for your testimony. You touched on chronic versus acute exposure, and I've done a little bit of work on the brownfields and formerly used defense sites, but I am not a RCRA, Superfund, any of that specialist. Can you tell us a little bit more about why air quality exposure you consider acute, and why you think it's inappropriate to use a Superfund chronic threshold, if I'm getting that right?
I totally get what you're saying. So let me see. Sure. So when we talk about acute exposures, well, let me step back. So Superfund, and it sounds like you got a board member that knows a little bit about those too. I actually worked at Hanford too for a while. So Superfund typically is going to be something that's cleanup and long-term. So an exposure to a receptor, like we've been calling, or person, is going to be kind of more of an ongoing long-term exposure, right? Because it's kind of waste that's there. That's what we call a chronic exposure. That's when we assess things like cancer risk or long-term health effects that could be non-cancer, but could cause from longer-term exposures. That's why, but still Superfund sites could have acute exposures too. That can happen. With air, air is tricky. And that's why they're consistent with the risk assessment guidelines for Superfund, but they're different and specific to understanding kind of air dispersion and how you look at facility-specific risk. Acute means something that could be short-term. Every agency defines it slightly different with its durations. But for example, EPA says it's about 24 hours, or less, okay? ATSDR says it's up to about 14 days of continuous exposure. So when we're doing, and I believe Dr. Clark actually put this in his report, the 4 steps of a risk assessment, the first piece is saying, how are people going to be exposed in this scenario? And that's going to be very facility dependent. It depends on their emissions, their activities. So an acute exposure looks at, is there a condition where something may be emitted and it's going to be intermittent, or, not this constant ongoing emission. So the reason you want to use, EPA, ATSDR, Cal EPA, Texas, every state and agency that makes these threshold values make them very specific for the duration you're looking at, because otherwise it's like comparing apples to oranges, right? You're looking at something that's, you're only going to be exposed, say, up to 24 hours, but you, let me explain. But you would use a value that's been intended to be compared to lifetime exposures. So why that's different is because we as toxicologists derive values differently. So a chronic value that would be used to assess, say, cancer or non-cancer, we're looking at data after animal exposures or human exposures over long periods of time. And they're absolutely going to be lower, right? Because you're being protective of somebody who's going to be exposed for a long time. In an acute situation, we're looking at the studies that have been designed just to look at situations where there's short-term exposures. Am I explaining this? Is that making sense?
I think so. I
And
might be
so
able
you
to.
don't want to compare something that's intended to be protective for 70 years with something that you're only being exposed for a short time.
Okay, yeah. So you're getting to what I'm getting
Okay.
at, which is that it seems like people still get chronic long-term exposure
You look at
to
all
air
of it.
quality pollution,
Mhm.
but we regulate it in a way that is acute 8-hour, 24-hour standards. Do you think there's a gap there?
No, because I don't just look at acute. You regulate also for chronic. And so when I said that RSL table, for example, isn't appropriate for acute scenarios, it's because those values have been made for chronic exposures. So you need to compare chronic exposures to a chronic value, an acute exposure to the acute values, and they exist.
Okay.
Does
I
that make
think
sense?
you're helping me
Okay.
out as a toxicologist.
Good.
I'm definitely not a toxicologist.
No,
I
this is
appreciate
what I
it.
enjoy.
So
Oh, sorry.
Oh, lost my train of thought. Okay. So the
Sorry.
it's been a long one. I'll maybe I can pick that up tomorrow, or I'm sure there's more questions, but I'll move on for now because I got a couple other questions for you.
Okay.
Let's see. Yeah, you've referenced an environmental justice plan by the city. Is that from the administration or from EHD?
I believe it's the city of Albuquerque.
One Albuquerque with one Albuquerque title or something?
It was something that was, what I've seen is something that was submitted to EPA as a guideline of how they were going to address environmental issues. And then also at the beginning, the environmental department published a kind of a process guide, a procedure guide that they were looking at, and it was kind of the same thing.
When was this published?
It was submitted as a comment to.
Has it as an exhibit.
Okay.
Mr. Hearing Officer, we can make this, and we were saving this for Chris Albrecht because he knows all about it. But of course, we don't have him. That's why I don't
Yeah,
have
he
the
will be
exhibit.
here, but if you could just let me know, this is something from EHD, from the Environmental Health Department of the city of Albuquerque.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, the one that they presented right at the beginning of this process, they presented a plan to address a lot of public participation. I can't remember what they call it, and optimal strategies.
Has the plan been implemented?
I'm sorry.
Has the plan been implemented?
No, because we started doing this regulation, but it was something that they had said, this is how the process we were looking at doing.
I think we don't know if it's been, because according to what I have read in their letter to the EPA, there are actually pieces that have been implemented. They said they've hired an EJ liaison.
Yeah.
There's the air monitoring with the
so
mobile
you're talking,
van.
now you're talking about the Title VI stuff. Okay, now I understand what you're talking about. Okay, thank you. That helps.
Okay.
Sorry, you're right. This would be a better question for EHD, but
yes.
Just two more here. Bookmark them. So for those of you who do, Mr. Wade, is it? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Thank you. Do you regularly follow, for your clients in air quality, do you follow regulatory actions regularly?
Do I file?
Follow them. Like, do you check up on what NMED is doing quarterly, or what the city of Albuquerque is doing?
What they're proposing, what they're doing?
Yeah.
Since I'm working in both jurisdictions, not always. The NMED is a little forthcoming. They send out notice bulletins all the time that tell you what they're proposing, what they're doing. I haven't really seen that as part of what the environment department's doing. So I don't know all the time what they're involved with.
So you work on air permits for lots of clients in our city and county.
Correct.
Right. Are you signed up for the air quality listserv?
I am signed up for the air quality. Yes.
So did you get notice about the open meetings that were between EHD and anyone who wanted to participate in a?
I did not.
Okay. I think those were supposed to be sent out through a listserv.
And you know that previously, like I did say, when Part 41 was being revised, I was contacted and said, we're doing this. So I went as a representative to industry and participated in some of those work groups. And I was specifically, invited and informed that was going on.
I'm very glad to hear that because it does seem, I've heard a lot about the process not including stakeholders. And because this is a regulation not brought by EHD, it is unique. And EHD did not decide to do the regulatory process because they said it wasn't their regulation. So they didn't, I'm not going to justify why they did that. I don't know. But that means that the board said, maybe there should be some stakeholder involvement in this and created a committee between EHD and any member of the public who wanted to be part of that committee. And that committee lasted a year before this was filed. So I'm very surprised that you guys didn't hear about it. Sorry, I keep using informal terms like you guys, but that permitting consultants didn't hear about it, and I'm considering all that.
Yeah, and I think in a little bit of defense of the environment department, you know, they had started putting together how they were going to respond to environmental justice. They had started, you know, saying we need to get more monitoring data to see where the problems are. And so they did get that trailer.
Yep. Yeah, I was there for the release of that trip, for the opening.
Yeah. So I mean, I think they're taking those baby steps to try to say, okay, how can we address environmental justice issues? What are the problems out there with the you know, the pollution? The only way we're going to really know that is by having a monitoring station. Unfortunately, they only have one. Now there's other options they can, and I think they're looking at other options of getting the newer cheap monitors and putting them out in a lot more area to kind of get them better background across the county instead of the trailer location at one at a time. You know, every year move it to this place, and so you're not getting a comparable of, okay, if I'm seeing this amount of emissions down here, you know, and there's not as much here, what's causing the problem down here that we're not seeing over here?
Yeah, yeah. No, I was glad to see that trailer come in. I think. Thank you for answering my questions. I got one more question, and I'm not sure who's the best person to answer it. So, one more set of questions. Is there best available control technology that controls VOCs?
Yes.
Great. Are HAPS VOCs? Are there VOCs that are HAPS?
There are HAPS in VOCs.
Yes, thank you. I've got two more. Can I do my two more questions and then she can go? I understand she's been waiting all day. She also hasn't been here most of the days.
That's fine.
So I have two more questions and then Elaine Semino can go. I understand she's a party and I want to give her a fair time. Are VOCs precursors to ozone?
Yes.
Thank you. That's all my questions.
Appreciate it. That was one question. Ms. Semino, are you still online? I know that you've been waiting patiently. Do you have questions of this panel?
Yes, I'm online. I'm not feeling very good though. So I'm going to try to get through my questions. I did send them. If you could put them up on a screen for the panelist, it may help them read the question.
And Ms. Semino, if you want to opt to ask first thing in the morning at 8:30, we can accommodate you at 8:30 in the morning if that's better for you.
Oh, that would be much better for me. Thank you very much.
All right, we've had a very long day today.
Yes, it would be very good. Thank you. I appreciate that.
My banana was green this morning when I started.
I just have one more comment. Mr. Wade, I understand you worked on, not Mr. Wade, Mr. Laney, on rural development. Would you like to join our board?
May I commute?
Thanks.
All right, we'll reconvene tomorrow morning at 8:30 panel. Hopefully we can get through with the remaining witnesses tomorrow. That's going to be a challenge, but if we can move along swiftly, we might be able to accomplish that. But 8:30 tomorrow morning. Thank you.